message center announcements for November, and a little bit of this is going to go into October, or since we didn't have a meeting last month, so you'll see a little bit of overplay. We'll tell you that in these announcements, and I have a specific slide for this, there was a lot of announcements around Microsoft Loop. If you're not familiar with that product, trust me, get into it. Start looking at what Loop can do. It's another great tool for you guys in your tool belt of things to do. And use. So make sure that you're looking at this. Make sure you want me to do a close-up of my swag. Well, I don't know if I can get that close, so we'll see. All right, let's start off with Viva Engage. So with Viva Engage, you do have this ability to be able to have unregistered users. Well, this is the ones that may have been getting an invite to come into this particular community outside of your organization. And in the past, what's happened is that even though they're pending, right, that they haven't accepted it, basically what happened is they would still get those notifications. And what this change is happening here early December into January is that they're not going to get that information. So until they accept that invite, right, they're not going to be able to get any of those communications. So it's a change, and probably a welcome change for those scenarios. Again, that's happening here early December into January. Let's talk about Microsoft 365 apps, and when they say apps in this particular one is across different apps. We're talking about Teams, and we're talking about devices, and we're talking about Microsoft Places. So if you're not familiar with this whole Microsoft Places piece, think of this as that online capability to be able to say, hey, I'm working at home, I'm in the office, I want to connect with people, I want to set up a meeting, I want to do that. Part of that is also when I get in there, I want to be able to check in, right? So this capability about being able to check in is giving us more opportunities to be able to check in when I'm at a meeting. So for example, if I'm going into a conference room and it's my meeting that I have for that particular room, it will check me in and say, hey, I'm actually here in this location. So that can be done through Teams itself, or it can be done through the panel, right? So if you have a Teams panel for your room, you'll notice things like check in, because Lawrence happens to be that person. I'm checking in as Lawrence because I'm Lawrence. So giving you that capability. So it's just a variety of new other ways to be able to do that check-in, so that you say, hey, I'm here, then other people will know and recognize the fact that you're in the office at that point. That's happening here mid-November to late November. From a SharePoint side of things, and this is early November, so it may be even starting to come out to you guys already into late November, it's being able to really shape what those fonts and themes are for your sites. Right, so that new branding capability for the fonts and themes, specifically site owners can create these font packages and create these themes as they need it, and then be able to access them, right, through the, if I wanted to make this consistent, I can do this through the Brand Center. If I have hub sites already configured, they'll inherit that capability as well. Please let your site owners know about this change happening here this month. All right, so staying on the SharePoint side, so approvals have been off for a little while, but being able to really set up so that you can have an approval across and automate this whole process, it's a template if you want to think of it for workflow, right? So being able to say, hey, I want this approval, I want to configure it for this particular library. This is kind of following on the heels of lists that recently had got this update as well. So you can do this through the automate configure approvals. And then once you get that set up, it'll automatically add that column in there. You'll be start to be able to do those approvals as is. One thing to note, and this calls out in the Message Center post itself, saying that, if you have something that's already in approval flight, right, that's getting approval at this point, hasn't been completed at this point, and you go and try to update that document, what you're going to find is it's actually going to be in view-only mode to be able to discourage any of those edits that you're doing, and that just to make sure that it gets through that process. If anything, that you may have to stop that approval and then make your changes and go from there. But again, make sure your users know about what's going on with this one. And right now it's only targeted, with worldwide happening here sometime in December or early December going into late January. Copilot pages, which I think you've probably heard some things about Copilot pages, starting out right now. I mean, early November to late November, it's coming out for organizations. And think about this as that persistent canvas that you, as from a Copilot chat, I can take that and I can put it into my page. And oh, by the way, I can collaborate with others so that they can see things like how I did my prompts and collaborate on the content that you may use for other places, right? This is actually utilizing a SharePoint embedded container, right, and the container is really based on that user, right? So kind of like how OneDrive is, that personal file container, right? So it's the same thing here for your SharePoint, I should say for your Canvas pages. So keep that in mind as part of that process, and just understand too is if that user leaves, that just like your OneDrive content, this would also go too. That container will go. So keep that in mind. Make sure you notify your users of this change. And again, it's happening currently. And by the way, if you want more details, I'm pretty sure Michelle will be able to talk your ear off if you want to. All right. Let's go on to the People Hub. Right now, People Hub is this thing where you have that card, that profile card, that brings information, relevant information into about this particular person, whoever that happens to be. So in this particular feature is happening here, January, February for targeted, and February and March for worldwide. It's that unified contact view for that person, right? And you may have LinkedIn connected to it. You may have other places that information is coming in to be able to, understand who this particular person is. So what you can do is you're going to have this ability to manage those sources and get into that back a little bit and say, hey, I need to edit it. Maybe it's my own contact information. Maybe it's some other information there that I need to adjust, or make sure that I'm getting connected to the right person. So make sure that you'll understand, you'll start seeing that managed sources capability in there after this has been released. Additionally, on that contact card, we are also seeing the ability to be able to have pronunciation. So as a person that a lot of people like to not correctly say my last name, so I could go in there and say the right pronunciation so that everybody knows how to actually say my name. So when we're in a conversation, that's better for me because I'm not bothered by the fact that they can't say my name right. And that's going to be added into the Teams and Outlook cards, similar to what you saw in the other one. Now, this is happening worldwide mid-January to mid-February. Targeted release is happening now. And this is going to be happening on Windows, Mac, new Outlook for Windows, and new Outlook for web as well at this point. You'll be able to record and share that correct pronunciation. And admins, if you do want to turn by the way, this feature is turned off by default. There is actually some PowerShell script commands to be able to enable it using Graph. But if you guys choose to go down this route, just notify your admins of this and notify your end users of this change. All right, so let's jump to Teams for a second. It was really interesting that hyperlinks have been one of those things that we just throw it in and we don't do much about it, especially with a lot, and it just automatically changes. But being able to have to quickly do this and say, hey, I want to be able to associate this hyperlink with text. This is really cool. It's like very easy to be able to set up and say, hey, I want to be able to do a quick and easy hyperlink to message. I highlight the text. I have my URL copied already. I highlight the text and I paste it, and now that text actually has the hyperlink associated to it. So very quick and easy. This has been happening in some of the newer like Outlook capabilities and some of those things. Now that feature is coming into Teams, so it's a lot easier to be able to do those hyperlinks. Mary Sue, I don't know about will the privacy be available to add in the Outlook signature. I highly doubt it because I think that's going to be a different, completely different part of it. That's really the contact card versus what you put inside the email. So I think that this one happens to be just the contact card that you see in Outlook and in Teams, as opposed to what you're talking about from your signature. So at this point, I think it's limited to that group. All right, Teams. Again, part of that whole Microsoft Places re-released, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, this thing of BYOD rooms and bookable desks. And with that, the ability to be able to say, hey, automatically, I see you're in the office. Do you want me to update your office location, say what's going on? Because you've used a bookable desk. And that bookable desk is either like monitors or keyboards or any of those things that you would want to have. So people coming in and just basically hoteling, if you want to think of it that way. So basically the admins have the option for users to opt in for that automatic location. Otherwise, it's going to be in Teams settings and privacy. And they'll get a banner on top that shows exactly what's going on. Like, hey, I look in your office. You want to automatically update so that it automatically says you're in the office, and then by location. And yes, you could do that so it automatically does that. And then people know you happen to be in the office at this point. So worldwide, that's coming out here in early January to mid-January. So look for that. Another feature on the Teams side, happening this month again, watermark for anonymous meeting join, right? So if you want to, as a meeting organizer, make sure that you are setting it up so that information is watermarked so that nobody that is not authenticated will walk off with that and you can't identify them. That's really what that watermark capability does. So basically, if they come in and they don't authenticate, right, they're anonymous, they don't put their name in there, then it's going to, I should say, they put their name in there, they don't have an email address associated to it, anonymous, then it's going to take that information and watermark across that presentation, right? So if screenshots are taken, you still know who that person happens to be. That's happening in Windows, desktop, web, Android, iOS, and Teams rooms. Just let people know if that's something you guys are planning on deploying. And as I mentioned, there was a lot going on from the Loop side of things. And the dates vary depending upon when things are happening, but a lot of them are happening first quarter of next calendar year. Things like retention labels, things like just common management tasks that you want to do with these Loop workspaces. I do want to mention, especially with retention labels and purview and being able to tag information, now you can be able to do things separate from chat, right? So Loop is one thing, chat's another thing, so keep that in mind. New Loop personal workspace, right? It's a SharePoint container, kind of like what I was talking about before with those Copilot pages. We're utilizing that SharePoint container to be able to segment off that information, right? Similar to how OneDrive is set up. You can promote members to owners so that you have multiple owners to a Loop space, just like you do for a SharePoint site. Those things that you want to think about. Geolocation or multi-geolocation is also going to be supported in this. So there's a lot of things that you would normally see for SharePoint here as well. Like one of those things I thought was interesting is the recycle bin for Loop workspaces. So if you delete something, by the way, it's coming. You can bring it back if you forgot, if you needed something out of it. So keep that in mind. Many of the same features that we have for SharePoint and OneDrive, you're going to see a lot in these updates happening here early, like starting in December, going into March of next year. Some quick mentions. Copilot retention policy is going to be separated from your Teams chat. That's happening here worldwide January, big first part of January. Checking to see who's working nearby. That capability, again, very similar to we were talking about Microsoft Places and some of those capabilities in there. That's coming out here in December worldwide. Admins can disable the ability to send messages to the meeting before and after, so they're adding a new option. So if I want to be able to say chat right? No chat at all. I want it only during the meeting, right? So you're going to get two more options: in meeting only for everyone, and in meeting only except anonymous users are going to be options that you can have as well. We have a new SharePoint no reply email address that is an admin. You have to make sure that that's on the safe senders list, right? So making sure that that's the case and that's not going to get blocked. If you are doing anything with media quality in Teams from an admin perspective, you got to be checking out this quality of experience report. We have a new version that came out in V5, and that means anybody that's dealing anything with Teams meetings, VoIP calls or one-on-one calls, or PSTN calls, right? So all three of them are going to be covered with these reports and really help you what's going on with that. So in seeing how the quality is good or not so good in certain areas. And then the ability to download transcript. And that's coming here in mid-November to late November. From an updated messages perspective, some of the things that you may be expecting, right? For instance, one of the things I know a lot of my customers have been asking about is the streamlined chat and channel experience, and when is that coming out? And it looks like worldwide, it's coming out here late January to early February for worldwide, and then GCC or the government spaces. Looks like in April. Another one I did want to mention too is, which one was it? Oh, the gallery view for Teams, which is when I minimize Teams and I have that in the background and I have some other things going on, you get this gallery view. That got changed as far as the timing on that one. So that's happening here late November as opposed to what it was in October. So keep that in mind. And then the offline mode for OneDrive for web, that keeps on getting pushed back, and it got pushed back again. Started in February, we're supposed to be done in March. Now we are going to be late November when it gets completed. Lastly, before I hand it to our first presenter for today, is just a reminder of the admin actions. We still don't have anything from a Teams live event retirement. That's still happening. So keep going and keep utilizing it, but don't forget, let's really start getting into town hall and webinar to be able to substitute for Teams live event, because it will eventually go away once there's parity between the features in Teams live event and town hall and webinar. Other than that, everything else has stayed the same. So I think we're good, Michelle, if you want to continue.
All right. That sounds great. I think I just put a little question in the chat there.
I don't know. We should have a little get together in memoriam of InfoPath 2013.
I wonder if anybody has any shirts. That would be interesting. Anybody have any InfoPath shirts?
Yeah.
You want to maybe have a bonfire?
Yep. We should.
Awesome. Thanks for the updates, Donald. That's fantastic.